Then I'll continue with the Universal Hiker story. And I was reading about the trail updates that I sent home during the hike. This is from Thursday, June 12th, 2014. Greetings from the trail, or rather from Bishop, California, where I have been laid up for 3 days with prostate inflammation, which prevented me from urinating. It was likely due to dehydration, which caused extra strain on the prostate, which is a weak link. It had been getting progressively worse, and thankfully I found myself in town where I could see a doctor and get a catheter, leg bag, rehydrate, and let the prostate settle down. I go back to the rural clinic this afternoon and hopefully will be able to get back on my way this evening. The 2 days previous to entering Bishop were strenuous, as Handbrake, my hiking partner for a few days, and I left one morning at 4 a.m. to climb Mount Whitney, 14,500 feet, the highest mountain in the contiguous United States. It took us 4 hours to climb from our campground 7 miles away. As usual, where there are hikers congregating, there is a party. I might say that most hikers range in the 20 to low 30 age category, and then it jumps to mid-50s, 60s, and a couple of 70-year-olds I have met. So when these young kids find an excuse to celebrate, there's plenty of marijuana and beer to go around. In this case, on the mountain, someone had camped up in the permanent hut on top and had whiskey and a bowl of weed to pass around. We hiked down and still made quite a bit of mileage looking forward to the next day, hiking over Forester Pass, which is the highest point on the trail itself, 13,200 feet. Whitney was a side trip. This year's snow levels in the Sierras are 15% of normal, so I hadn't seen anything but splotchy snow before we got on the north side of Forester. Finally, we saw what looked like the snow-covered Sierras. Here we got a chance to experience what it's like to post-hole or take a step and sink down into slushy snow up to our hips, and glissade or slide down some slopes on our fannies to take some shortcuts. Many hikers, including myself, thought filtering our water from streams and rivers this high was unnecessary. I did get a mild case of giardia, which made it hard to travel with one end plugged up and the other with the squirts. So from now on, I filter everything. We officially began the Sierra section at Kennedy Meadows, population 32. It has a general store and a small burger joint that caters to hikers, hunters, and fishermen. 40 to 50 hikers converge on this site, this little store, every day during hiking season. It's a major point of resupply box mailings. We sent our first boxes here as well, since the store has minimum supplies. The owner is busy with hundreds of packages as well as running the store and gets stressed. Neon, a young hiker on a budget, was asked to leave for some reason. The next day he was still there and had taken a shower, which cost $3 without paying. The owner found out, got really mad, and threatened to take out his gun and start shooting. We met Neon down the trail next to a river, and suddenly a helicopter appears and starts circling us for the longest time. It dropped a red banner, maybe to test the wind for landing conditions, but never did land. We couldn't help but laugh that it was searching for Neon to collect the $3 for the shower. By the way, Michael finally has a trail name after 600 miles. His sleeping gear is on the bottom of his pack. He unpacks everything from the top of the pack and lays it all around his camp. Somebody came along in the morning and saw this and asked him if he was having a yard sale. This stuck and is an example of how one gets his or her trail name. I haven't seen Michael since Kennedy Meadows, but may meet up with him soon in Mammoth Lakes. I can forward one of his emails to give you an idea where he has been. And this is from Michael's email. Friday, July 18th, 2014, Michael wrote, "From Sierra City, I stayed up at the Lakes Basin area, hiked around to Volcanic Lake, Salmon Lake, Young American Lake, and Sardine Lake. I met the couple from Santa Cruz at Sardine Lake. They fed me well and let me use their wetsuit snorkel gear. I swam the entire perimeter of the lake, which took me around 2 hours. It was like visiting an alien planet. The locals mentioned that it's a hard place to catch fish. Well, in a deep cove on a hard-to-hike-to part of the lake, I saw plenty of good-sized rainbow trout. It seems they've reached that size by knowing where and where not to go. I also saw an old-looking sunken wooden rowboat. While doing a sit at Volcanic Lake around dusk, I watched an American martin, ID'd him from my John Muir Law's field guide, run in my direction. He passed within 10 feet of me with some sort of funny furry prey in his mouth. That was my first experience with the weasel tribe. I was also in the Oroville area, which is where Ishi was living. It was a spur-of-the-moment stop, so I didn't acquire any maps, although I would have loved to try and find his camp. When I was there, it was 104 degrees, so I didn't get much dirt time in, but instead stayed close to the water. I had planned on going to the Lost Coast from Mount Shasta after I visited Headwaters Outdoor School. I didn't know that Mount Shasta and Shasta were different places and got a hitch to Shasta by mistake. It is essentially a historic town with a post office and gas station. I met sort of PCT hiker named Peyton, the only black hiker I've seen, and a southbounder, who was trying to hitch up to Humboldt. Instead of trying to go back the other way, I scratched my plans to check out Headwaters for now and hopped in a car with him going to the coast. I came from the sunniest place in the United States to what seemed the foggiest. I haven't seen the sun, stars, moon, or any blue sky in a couple of days. Coming from 3 months in the desert mountains to the Pacific Ocean feels like stepping up to the edge of the world. In a way, it reminds me of parts of the coast back home, but much more dramatic. I couldn't quite get to the start of the Lost Coast Trail, so I just started walking the coast from where I was, and I've been walking the beaches until I reach sheer cliffs and hard surf, and then I head inland into the redwoods. The redwoods up here are much more pristine than in Santa Cruz. There's much more diversity in plant life also. I've been feasting on thimbleberries and blackberries, as those are the only ones I can ID. There are a number of other berries and fruits, including one that looks like a little pepper, but very few of them are in my Sierra field guide. The forests out here on the northern coast remind me of something out of Jurassic period. Last night I camped on a bluff looking out over the Pacific and watched a hawk hunt until I fell asleep. This morning I went into a field and watched a herd of Roosevelt elk graze. I've been trying to search for the reason I wanted to do the PCT, other than that I've always wanted to do it. What I came up with was that I wanted to explore nature, and the trail got me out to some amazing wild places. Hiking just to hike hasn't been doing it for me. That's the end of his email. Now I'm going to start with my next trail update is June 25th, 2014. Greetings. riding from South Lake Tahoe, which is the closest big city near the trail, about 15 miles. Mr. Cup from Tokyo and I had been hiking together for the last 2 days and were greeted by Coppertone at Highway 50, where the trail crosses the road. He is one of the trail angels who follows the herd, parks near an exit, and offers root beer floats to PCT hikers as they breeze by. I first passed this 66-year-old man when he was on one of his naked, shoes-only jogging outings on the trail about a month back. He has a great body and looks natural out there. We are now officially out of the Sierras and coming into the Northern California. The Sierras were absolutely breathtaking. Sonora Pass was one of my favorites. Everywhere you looked, there was majestic beauty. Yosemite was pristine, but also one of the most difficult stretches. One day we wore our mosquito head nets and DEET for the entire day as swarms of bugs would constantly attack, especially near the streams, rivers, and lakes. The climbs were also beautiful, but very steep and rugged. We would climb 3,000 feet up a mountain, only to descend the same into a canyon and then do it all over again. At one point, I took a wrong turn at Glen Ellen Campground and took a 2-day detour into the Grand Canyon of Tuolumne River and ended up in White Wolf, where the folks at this tiny resort said I was 17 miles from the trail. Getting a hitch back to Tuolumne Meadows, I started all over again. Michael has actually been doing a lot of side trips off the official PCT on purpose, just for more solitude and some adventure. I finally reconnected with him in Bridgeport after not seeing him for a couple hundred miles. I was coming out of Kennedy Meadows north after a resupply. Resupplies are usually every 3 to 5 days, and had climbed about an hour up to a peak where I met Rex, another PCT hiker. We got to talking, and when he found out I was Yard Sale's dad, he said Michael was down at Bridgeport waiting for me, thinking I was a day behind. Rex said Yard Sale was out of money and living out of hikers' boxes and day-old bread from the bakeries. So I went down the hill and hitched into Bridgeport, which was 32 miles the other way from Kennedy Meadows. The guy who picked me up just happened to be the fellow who was hosting Yard Sale. This sort of coincidence happens all the time on the trail. We call it trail magic. I come in and Michael is eating a cheese sandwich and drinking a beer. He has all the comforts of home with free food, bar, TV, bed, and bathroom. The fellow who took him in is Billy Ray Coffey, an ex-professional bull rider and oil driller, builder, cowboy, and character. He has been taking in hikers in a building next to a house he is building. I usually get up with the sun and like to end the day an hour or two before the sun goes down. Since I hike slower than most of the young power hikers who speed by me, if I hike 10 to 12 hours a day, I can usually get 20 or more miles in. There is a balance between meandering along the trail and making miles. After September 15th, the weather can get bad up in Washington, so there is an element of getting there sooner than later. Last year, many hikers couldn't make it all the way due to the border because of snowstorms. We did pick a good year to finish, at least for now. The snow levels have been low, so the passes have been easier than, say, in 2011, when many were turned back because of high snow year. That year, out of 1,000 or so hikers that started, only about 100 finished. Besides the crampons and ice axe, one needed snow survival skills that year. Besides, the crampons and ice axes one needed snow survival skills that year. One last note on trail angels and trail magic. 2 days ago, One such fellow appeared at a road crossing after Ebbett's Pass. He offered cooked eggs, chili, cereal, and chocolate milk. In this case, he was there for just 5 days. Others move with the herd. Usually this is all free to PCT hikers. Running into these kind folks is a tremendous psychological lift. Just sitting in a chair for 15 to 20 minutes to enjoy a chat and refreshments can lift the spirits and make the day. Okay, this is July 17th, 2014. Landed in Mount Shasta City yesterday. I have been hiking with a 60-year-old handbrake since South Lake Tahoe. His wife Debbie and his 3-year-old daughter picked us up in Shasta City and drove us back down to Oroville for 2 days of rest at his dad's 10-acre ranch. Handbrake has been an inspiration and pacekeeper for this section of the hike. After retiring from Saudi American Oil Company, living and working in Saudi Arabia as a production engineer for 17 years, he has come to make his home in Sisters, Oregon, on 40 acres. 2 years ago, he ran the Pans Marathon. 3 years ago, he rode his bike across the U.S. coast to coast, and he has been an avid outdoorsman all his life, with hunting, fishing, hiking, and mountaineering. Now I am trailing behind him every day because his pace is just a little faster than mine, and it pushes my limits just that much. During breaks, he can cook and eat a snack, filter his water, jump in a lake to wash off, and be ready to go again before I can barely finish sitting down and getting something out to eat. I just finished watching a PCT documentary and the possible weather conditions we may face in Washington if we get there too late is an impetus to keep moving. That leads to Yard Sale's new outlook on the trail. He has changed his plans to spend more time in each location of his choice. His new destination is the Lost Coast, Shelter Cove area of the California coast. He wants to spend more time with primitive skills work and less focus on making mileage. I too feel the need to go back to some of the more beautiful areas we have hiked through to spend more time. John Muir hated to use the term hiking and preferred taking a walk for his explorations of nature. But in this case, it is what I took on, and the mileage is a factor. We hope to hook up again in Sisters, where we are invited to Handbrake's house for a rest. I did my first 30-day hike a few days ago, hiking out of Old Station, a former stagecoach stop. We knew we had a 20-mile stretch without water over rugged, exposed volcanic rock on what promised to be a very hot day. Fortunately, there was a cloud cover that day, and the weather stayed bearable until the sun shone through, and we had a taste of what the heat could be like on a ridge walk. At 15 miles, there was a 60-gallon water cache that we had heard about possibly being there, and just beyond that, our old friend Coppertone, remember the naked runner, was there on a dirt road serving his root beer floats. Handbrake, who doesn't pass up a chance to jump into any lake or river, wanted to go on to Baum Lake and a huge fish idea takes off.